Welcome to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila, and I've got my co-host with me today, Mr. Andre. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me again.
Again.
Happy to be here.
We have a guest in the studio with us today, Julie with Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group, one of the co-founders of this group. You may not know, but there is a wonderful monthly meeting, correct, Julie?
Correct.
Yes.
We meet every month. We're a networking group of like-minded people. I like to call us kind of a bunch of weirdos, because we're invested in real estate and not a lot of people are. And if you're going to do something well and successfully, it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people on a regular basis.
That's the biggest thing with real estate investment because you're right. Not a lot of people are choosing to put their money into real estate or have chosen to put their money into investing in real estate because we weren't really taught to do that. Right.
Nope.
And that's usually a lot of the hurdle and what people are asking for. I was never taught how to buy real estate for an investment. We weren't even taught to how to really get a mortgage and buy real estate for ourselves in general. You're just figuring it out as you go. But you guys have created the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group to bring these people together. Tell us more.
That's right. So I have a very unfair advantage, I'll confess. And by the way, I don't think we're weirdos.
Hey, we're weirdos too.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm in good company. That's great.
Yeah. We sit on the radio and talk about real estate. So
Okay, so we're all
you're
good.
in good company.
We're in a great club here. I have an unfair advantage. I was actually raised by a real estate investor.
Okay. Second
And
generation.
Andre was too. it
I
sounds
was
like.
as well.
Yeah, we've talked
Yeah,
already.
yeah.
And that is that makes it way easier.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because then when you're introduced to real estate, when I was back in 2001, pregnant, 6 months pregnant with my first child, and I was working as a physical therapist at the time, and I was on the path, right? I was like, went to school, got good grades, went to university, got a wonderful education, got a wonderful career.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working as a physio. I'm pregnant with my daughter. My husband goes to a real estate investment seminar in Edmonton, meets a guy named Arlen Dolan.
Mm-hmm.
And at the seminar, they're like, buy a rental property. And Jeff called and talked to Arlen. He said, I can't be part of this group. It costs $200 a month. So Arlen said, buy a rental property that cash flows $200 a month, and you're set.
You've got your membership. Yeah.
It made perfect sense. And so when he called me, he said, I want to invest in real estate, and I was all in. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's do that. Most people don't. That's not most people's paths.
Yeah.
Fair
I
enough.
would say it's really hard for, like, let's say it's a couple, one spouse to go and another one to stay home, and to have the other spouse come home and say, we're going to buy a house. It's like, but we already own a house.
Yes.
Or we're renting, or all kinds
It's a
of
bit of
things.
an abstract concept when you're first introduced to it.
Yeah.
Totally. And just like you said, Jamila, we're not raised to buy houses. The closest thing I would say is I played a lot of Monopoly. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. But that was just like, it's a property you get. That's like the dirt.
Yes.
And then you might be able to get a house on it, right?
Yeah.
So
If
I
you
didn't
play long enough.
If you play long enough and you make enough money.
Yeah.
Right? But it was completely unrealistic until, now. And so we like to help people, just know that they're not alone and learn all kinds of different strategies that can not only get them into the market, lots of different ways, but also grow what they have and take control of their finances and their financial future.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I find in my career and talking to people as someone who is a real estate investor and people that are like, oh, I want to do it too. It's like when they think they move the money from the bank to the property, that the money goes poof and disappears. When really it's just now being invested in this asset. But there isn't that mindset when you move money from your bank account into a stock or into the stock market. It doesn't seem like it goes poof. They still see the number right there on the screen and it ticks and it goes up and down.
I think that has to do with kind of liquidity, right? Because when you buy stocks, you know you can sell them right away and you get that money back. Whereas
Okay.
with real estate, it's more of a hard asset, right? It maybe takes a little bit longer to sell it or to move it or to transition it into something else. And so maybe that's
fair.
where the mental block comes from some people and why they think the money goes poof.
Right.
That's a good point. And there's also zero incentive for anybody to let people know about real estate investing
100%.
because the banks make a lot of money by people investing in the stock market through them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, the
So
whole system is set up
who's gonna
to
tell
survive
anybody?
that way.
Yeah.
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 So where was the first place that you bought? This first house that you miraculously agreed to?
Right? It was on 111th Avenue and 111th Avenue and 123rd Street in Edmonton, Alberta.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, really good area.
Good area.
Yeah.
Very good area. I wish I still had it.
Oh, it's good. That was my next question. You
I
still
know.
own it?
I know. No. Mm-mm.
What did you pay for it?
Oh my gosh. $5,000 down, and we assumed a $100,000 mortgage. It was $105,000.
Wow.
And that was assumable mortgages. I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys have heard of those.
Of course. Yes. Yes.
So, to our listeners, an
Yes.
assumable mortgage is when someone is selling their home, they have an existing mortgage on it, and you go into the bank and you take it over for them. And there
Yeah.
isn't a lot of you don't have to go through pre-qualification or anything. You just kind of sign and take it over. Is that
That's how simple it was when I started
Right.
back in 2001.
they don't do that anymore?
Not at all.
No.
You can assume a mortgage, but you usually have to qualify to assume it.
As if you were getting your own mortgage anyway.
Right, but
Yeah.
they'll leave the same terms in place and the same like they'll leave it in place.
Right.
Right.
Like, okay, this
You're
guy
at your
qualified.
same amortization period.
Interest
Same
rate.
everything.
Same
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But the beauty of what we used to be able to do was that you didn't have to qualify for financing, and it didn't matter how much money you put down. Like, you couldn't do zero down.
Right.
Well, wouldn't you have to pay out the difference, though, like if you were buying it for more than what the mortgage is? But people would typically be in this situation because they need to get rid of it and they need to get out of that mortgage. So there isn't additional.
So back
Value.
then, this is why it got stopped.
Regulated.
Regulated. Because there was
Good
a ton
word.
of fraud. Ton of fraud.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people would buy a house. Yeah. People would buy a house and then they'd refinance it up to like 95% loan to value. Mm-hmm. And then they would sell it and as an assumable mortgage.
Okay.
And a lot of that was going on. And so, of course, they tightened up.
Yeah.
Which
That makes
totally
sense.
makes
It
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah. So, but it was, for a long time, a great way to buy because we didn't have to qualify for any financing. And I don't think I told you this. I'm American by birth.
Oh, okay.
And well, yeah, like when I moved to Canada, I moved in 1999.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any Canadian credit.
Mm-hmm.
My husband had good credit and everything, but I didn't have any Canadian credit, and we bought things together, as a couple.
Yeah.
So it was a huge advantage to be able to not have to qualify for financing. Plus, we could buy as many as we wanted, and we bought 36 houses,
Wow.
either through assumable mortgages or rent to own, which we're probably going to talk
Yeah.
about,
Yes.
or through agreements for sale, or through vendor take back mortgages.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we sure do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you just listed off the secret sauce to real estate investors in the 90s in Alberta. I've talked to a lot of people that did really well in this space in Alberta. And, as someone who started her real estate investing in BC, which is much tougher, and I started in 2007-ish. And so a lot more regulations. And I hear people who say, I bought 36 houses in Alberta. And I'm like, how did you do that? So we're going to talk more about how they did that. And super cool. Anyway, stay tuned. We're going to talk more about how people were buying a lot of homes in Alberta through assumable mortgages and all of this fun stuff.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila. We've got our co-host, Andre, on with us today.
Hello, hello.
And we have a very special guest, Julie, who's the co-founder of Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. Now, if you've been paying attention, Julie, thank you for coming.
Yeah, my pleasure. This is so awesome.
We were just talking about her journey of becoming a real estate investor in Canada, because she's originally from U.S. Sorry. Just joking.
I'm from Denver, Colorado. I'm not sorry. It's I'm
Such a touchy topic
It
right
is
now.
kind of
I'm not
touchy right
sorry.
now.
I'm not sorry because I'm American, but I'm also Canadian. So I am sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I get that
it?
part.
I'm
Yes, because
sorry.
Canadians always say we're sorry. I was like, did you just insult all of Canadians?
No.
Let's clarify that.
That was not my intention.
But okay, down to the brass tacks. What we're really talking about is, I, as someone who invests in real estate and lives in the Okanagan, I've met a ton of people from Alberta and people from Alberta who have done really well. Like, yeah, I'm a real estate investor. I bought one property every 2 years in BC. And I talked to someone from Alberta. They're like, yeah, I bought 30. And I'm like, how did you do that in Canada? Because it's tough, the regulations and taxes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, there's even like lending restrictions. Like some banks won't give you more than 10 mortgages.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's 5 right now. Even right now,
Oh,
you can't have
has
more
it
than
dropped?
5 personal properties.
Oh.
Yeah. So they like there's a lot of regulations that limits people from really holding a lot of properties, and I'd love to dig in to know how you dance around those in the past. And so we were talking about assuming mortgages, which isn't necessarily a path anymore. But right at the end of the last segment, you rattled off rent to own, vendor take back, and agreement for sale, which are all still strategies you can take today in the Canadian real estate market.
Yes, and some of them are more favorable in Alberta.
Okay.
But I'll say, and you know, we were talking off air about this, that vendor take back mortgages still happen. And same with, we'll call it rent to own. I like to call it lease options because that's like the legal term for it.
Okay.
But everybody knows what a rent to own is.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So those are 2 really good strategies. And, you know, really there's a third that I didn't touch on. And that is, you can buy properties with partners, and like I'm the active partner, and then I've got a partner that'll put up the down payment, the 20% down, plus a land transfer tax, plus a, you know, like a war chest, and qualify for the financing, and I'll take care of the rest. And that way I'm not qualifying for financing for that property either, but
Right.
I am part owner.
Gotcha.
Because you've put the deal together.
Correct.
Yes.
And it's a really valuable skill.
Yes.
So that's infinite. Like as long as you can get people who want to be invested in real estate, but they don't want to do all the work, and by the way, hardly anybody does.
Yes.
Then that's another really beautiful way to get into real estate without having to qualify for financing and without any money. And that's a big obstacle for a lot of people too.
Absolutely.
You see a lot of stuff where they're like, buy real estate with other people's money.
Yeah.
And those are a lot of the hook lines in investment groups to bring people in to teach them. But it is a real thing, and that really breaks it down there. And it's that you have the skills, you can find the right property, you know what the business plan is going to be, you know what the cash flow revenue is going to be, you have set up the funds for any repairs or maintenance or property management that's going to happen. You're going to look after this whole thing, and you have an investor that's going to put the money into the deal. And of course, it's going to be tied to the asset with their name on the asset to secure their funds in a partnership agreement. And now you've just acquired another rental property with other people's money, right? Win-win situation.
Very win-win.
Yeah.
And, you know, both people take risk.
Yes.
Because as the active investor, you may not be putting any money down. You may not be qualifying for financing, but you're also not going to make any money if it doesn't go well.
work, yeah.
Yes.
You know? So, and then of course it's a risk for the person that's putting up all the money and putting up their credit because they've got to trust that the other person's going to do a good job. And if the deal doesn't work out, it's actually less risky for the person putting up the money and qualifying for financing.
At least they have an
at the
asset.
end
They
of
have the
day,
asset.
and they get an asset.
Yeah.
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 And so, I mean, if they hold on to it for, usually 25 years, it's going to be paid. It's going to be paid off as long as the mortgage payments are made.
So at Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group, the monthly meetings, do you guys talk about this? Like if someone's listening, be like, hey, I think I could put those deals together and get money. Like, is this something that you guys coach people through and work with people on?
Yeah, well, we bring together, we bring speakers every month, and we talk about lease options, raising money. So that's what that would be, joint ventures, RSP investing, because people can use their RSPs, TFSAs, LIRAs as mortgages on property, and most people don't know that. There's less than zero incentive for banks to promote that. 'Cause
Interesting.
banks do extremely well with people's retirement funds. And by the way, I'm fine with banks. I really am. I
We need
totally
them.
am. Totally need them. But like we talked about before, that's why we weren't taught about real estate investing, because there's just not a lot of incentive for people to be real estate investors. It's more the institutions that where the focus
Well,
is
there's a
gonna be.
lot of incentives for individuals to be real estate investors. There's a lot of wealth to be made if
Yes.
you look at it as a long-term investment. There's downsides for the institutions, for the banks and the financial advisors, for you to move your money into that space, because now they're not making money on that money.
Exactly.
And if their mortgage department was connected to them, they might do more referrals back and forth.
Yeah.
But there's the entire banking system is set up on knowing that the Canadian population is committed to having so much money sitting in there that they're investing, but then they're also reinvesting and making more money on top of that. And they need to know that your money's sitting there. So they don't really want to encourage you to pull big chunks of that out
No.
and buy houses.
They don't want you doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's not that they don't want it, but there's just nothing in it for them, for you to do it.
Yeah.
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 Well, I guess
Other than the mortgage,
Other than, which
which they do well on.
Yes.
They do pretty darn
Absolutely.
well.
especially nowadays.
Dear Lord. Yeah.
I'm curious about rent to own, like your or lease options, your perspective on it, how you see them and how you use them to invest in real estate.
So a couple of ways. Right now, the Okanagan has an affordability challenge
Yes.
for most people that even just want to become first-time home buyers. So a lot of people might have like 5% down and enough for land transfer tax, but they just don't make enough money to qualify for a high ratio mortgage, which when I say that, I mean like a 95% loan to value mortgage, CMHC. I hope I'm not speaking over everybody's heads, but it's how most first-time home buyers buy.
Absolutely.
So if somebody can start a lease option, they can usually put 5% down, but they don't have to qualify for financing, and they can take I usually 5 years
Okay.
to improve their income,
Yep.
or house hack,
Yep.
or save more money so that they could put more down.
Increase their credit along the way. And,
Yeah, if you put more down, then you need less from the bank.
Correct.
Right? So it buys people time, and if they've put up a down payment, then they have incentive to make sure that they are successful. So I think it's a really good strategy for people today, because so many people are discouraged. And I've even worked with people, and you asked about coaching. Yes, I also coach people on different kinds of strategies in real estate investing, just because I've done a lot of different strategies. But recently, I worked with a gal out of Ontario, and she was kind of stuck with a property that she had originally just wanted to flip. And you know what happened to the market in Ontario? And her project, unfortunately, had taken too long, and it was fairly over budget. So she was facing a big loss if she was going to sell it through real estate. So what ended up happening is she marketed it as a lease option, a rent to own, and this really nice couple named Trisha and Mike came along. They gave her a good down payment, and she's renting to own the house to them.
Awesome.
For the next 5 years, and they are busting their butts. I can't swear on the show, can I?
No.
Okay,
Not
good. They're
Netflix.
busting their butts to to do whatever it takes to get this house.
So this is really interesting. I think there's a lot of value for listeners because we have a flooded market of sales. There's a lot of people trying to sell their homes right now, and this could be a tool in your toolbox. We have to take a break, but we're going to come back and talk about how you can relate this to trying to sell your home in today's market where there's a lot of competition. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila, and we have our co-host, Andre, with us today.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, Julie, who is the co-founder of the Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we have been talking about all different strategies to acquiring and investing in real estate and how you can multiply your purchases by using other people's money and different techniques. And at the end of the break, we were chatting, in the last segment, we were talking about rent to own, which is actually technically lease options, we've learned today is what you call it.
And we can say rent to own. We won't get in trouble
Well, one thing that really
if you want.
clicked for me with that was how much inventory is for sale right now in our marketplace. So we definitely have buyers out there that need to sell their home, and doing a rent to own option with a buyer could do a lot of things in this market. One, it can find you a buyer for your home, and now you can move on if you need to relocate, move to a different city, there's a job you want to downsize, any of those things going on in your life. But two, you could be opening up the door for an opportunity for a first-time home buyer or a buyer that is ready and willing to buy a home in this market, but may not be able to qualify through traditional banks, which we all know these days is quite hard. Like the bar is
The stress
quite
test is
high.
high. Yeah.
So it's not saying that you're going to bring in someone that can't afford to buy your home and hope they can. You still have a way to qualify these people, but they just can't meet the high bar the banks are setting right now. So this is really cool. I want to keep talking about this. And Andre, I'd like you to chime in here too, because you grew up in rent to own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, my family, we started our real estate journey with rent to own. That was initially it. And we came at it from the perspective of buying a home or working with a client that is looking to buy a home. And then we would buy the property for them, or we would buy the property outright and then enter a rent-to-own agreement with that person. And so we did 3-year term contracts. You mentioned you'd prefer 5, but we did the 3 years, and then at the end of that 3 years, they've repaired their credit, they've gained a bunch more savings, they've had a few promotions at work, and now they can qualify to go out on their own and get more traditional financing on that property. So that's kind of the approach that we took. What about you? How?
Well, that strategy is how I bought my house in Kelowna.
Okay.
It's called the tenant first strategy.
Okay.
And it sounds like you were doing it way before it ever had a name.
I guess so. I guess
Like
so.
that
I didn't know
I
a
was country
name about
before
it.
country was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that story because we went through tough times. We lost everything in the recession of 2008. So yeah, we bought 35 houses and we did extremely well. And we were like multimillionaires at one time. And then we lost everything.
Oh.
And it really sucked. It's not as much fun as it sounds. And so when we decided to come out to the Okanagan, I knew that I couldn't rent because I needed stability. I have 5 children. And at the time they were very young. And so we came out because we knew there was a rent-to-own opportunity out here. We came out to look at it, and we didn't think that it would be a fit. And then we ended up finding our house, and it was in foreclosure. It had been vacant for 3 years, owned by the bank in 2012. You guys remember? You remember 2012?
Yeah.
So
I
by
bought a few houses then.
It's changing toilets then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was owned by RBC. And the reason I have a point to this story, okay? You bring up you bought a house for people that needed that time.
Yes.
So what we did, and since we had a big background in real estate investing, we found this house. We put an offer on it, even though we had no business putting an offer on anything, like believe me.
Yeah.
Went back, and I'd already been really good at doing deals and raising money. I went to a buddy and presented to him the opportunity, and he and his friend bought the house, and we did a rent to own.
Okay.
So that we could start over.
Okay.
And that was the only way I was willing to move to Kelowna. If I had if I knew I was going to be a homeowner.
Right.
Otherwise,
right.
it was going to be too unstable for me. I could never handle the risk of being evicted by a landlord.
Right.
So that's another beautiful thing about it, because we worked tooth and nail, fought hard for a long time to be able to rebuild and to be able to finally qualify for financing and to buy our house. And I still live there. And so it's a real blessing for people. And like RBC was not a motivated seller, and at the same time, they wanted it off their books. So we helped RBC out. The partners that worked with me, my buddy and his buddy, they did very, very well. And of course, we did really well.
Of course.
So
win-win all around.
It's a huge win-win for people. So your family did for people what has been done for me, and we've been able to help a lot of people that way too.
Yeah.
So it's really great. It really, really is awesome. And so, Jamila, you were just saying we have between 10 and 11 months of inventory on the market right now, and if you're holding properties that are vacant, it's really painful.
Oh yeah.
And lease options can be challenging to get done. They can, because I don't know the last rent to own your family did, Andre.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
In the last 5 years, it's been like everything just seems got tougher and tougher and tougher. So we like
Regulated.
very regulated.
Yeah.
You've got to be very careful with money and tracking it. We only have the tenant buyers save their own money. They have to be accountable to us, like how much have you saved? We either check in quarterly or every 6 months.
Okay.
Because they have to perform.
Yeah.
In the old days, you could just charge more and set it aside for the tenant buyer and then have them buy the property. And it's really hard for them to eventually buy it unless you do it very, very carefully. So it's a magical strategy. And it also has to be handled with care. It absolutely can be done. And I really think it could be something that would help a lot of people here.
Do you, in the ones that you're doing recently, are you doing the credits as well? So a portion of their monthly goes to... Oh, no. Okay.
No. Rather than that, they have to save on their own.
Oh, interesting.
And that's the accountability factor.
Okay.
We're going to check in, depending on their situation.
Sure.
The more challenge somebody has, the more accountability they need.
Sure.
But I'll give you an example. There's all these. I think the ideal person to do this right now is somebody that is actually getting a trade. We were talking about this. I had the president of Okanagan College out, Neil Fasina. Such a great guy. I highly recommend you have him on your radio show.
Okay.
And he's phenomenal. He came out to talk, and he is on fire about trades because Canada needs more housing.
Yes.
Regardless of tariffs and Trump. And
Yeah.
the other thing, Canada needs more housing. So we need more tradesmen and women. And so in the conversation, we also have this mortgage broker who's usually really vocal, and he's so smart. His name's Craig Von Dolder. Shout out to Craig. And he was talking about how tradesmen have a very amazing ability to qualify for financing, but not until, they have a 2 or 3 year track record.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
After they're because they go through work, they train, they work while they train.
Yeah,
right?
their apprenticeship.
Thank you. I don't know why I run a construction company. I don't know why I couldn't pull that out of my head.
Get it.
But they don't qualify when they're in their apprentice.
No.
They have to get through. But I'm telling you, these people get through. Yes.
They're the best. If you ask me, they are the best candidates.
Well, there was that staggering statistic that kept on popping up when we were building the Rydell. It was in Canada, for every 7 tradespeople that are retiring, there's one that comes to replace that base.
Whoa.
So you and I talked about this on the phone in our little meeting. What was it, like, I don't know, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
I was talking to Jamila, and I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if you could set up a program where it's like, get a trade, get a house?
Ah. There
It'd
you
be a
go.
great way to pre-sell a building.
Yeah.
It would.
Yeah.
It takes some time, but I mean, they are ideal candidates. I mean, also people that have been recently divorced and they've got good jobs, good income, that kind of thing, but they need to reset and they need time to rebuild.
Yeah. And this is a great strategy that, I wish if it could be embraced, it could help so many people get into housing. I mean, there's a lot of people sitting on homes with a lot of equity that they could take rents. But we're going to keep talking about this after the break and maybe get into a bit more of the details of how the specific transaction happens for our listeners. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Real Build. I'm your host, Jamila. I've got my co-host, Andre, with me today.
Hello.
And you've been listening to our special guest, Julie, the co-founder of Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. Julie, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So this show, we have been talking about the different ways of purchasing real estate without the traditional banks. And the last segment, we were talking about rent to own, which is actually called lease options, right? Do I have that correct now?
Correct.
Lease options.
That's the technical legal term for it.
Okay. And so this is a strategy where, as a homeowner trying to sell their home, especially in a market like today where your home is sitting on the market and you may not be able to sell it quickly and you need to relocate, and you find someone who makes sense that they can pay the mortgage, but they may not qualify for the high standards that the banks have for mortgage approvals right now. And so you come up with a way, an agreement. First of all, you agree on a price for the home in today's time, right? And then you come up with a term with the person of how long. Andre, you said your family used to do 3 years. Julie, you said you like 5 years. But you come up with a term. You come up with a rental rate that they're going to rent that home for. And then you come up with an amount they need to save over that term to top up their down payment to qualify. And you can break that over the 5 years and add that to the monthly payment and force save them as the owner. You can collect it and save it.
Which is what we used to do.
Yeah. Julie's saying you used to put that back on the owner to save that money, but you would do regular check-ins to make sure those savings were happening.
Correct. And the best way somebody could do that is by creating a home buyer account. And a lot of bank, you can create an account where that's what you're saving the money for.
Okay.
At a financial institution.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's called a first-time home buyer account.
Okay.
That they need to save. You just break it down. You need to save this much every month. And by this time, you're going to have this much saved. And yeah, we're going to check in on you, because in the old days, you used to be able to save that money on people's behalf. And the golden rule is he who has the gold makes the rules. And not all that long ago, the banks started to say, wait, whose money is this? Is it their money? Is it my money? Is it the tenant buyer's money? Got things all mixed up. And they said no, because a confused mind says no, right?
Sure.
So you need to hold people accountable. Absolutely. So the regular check-ins are absolutely necessary.
Amazing. And then, so you guys, everyone comes up with a legal binding contract, obviously,
Yeah, so it's a lease. It's a residential
Yes.
lease.
Okay.
And one of the things that is different about this lease is that you put an addendum in the lease. You can put an addendum in a lease. And landlord tenancy laws are very strict in British Columbia. So that's why these contracts need to be handled with such they need to be handled delicately. They really do. The tenant buyer agrees to cover the repairs that happen,
Okay.
the taxes, the tax cost,
Okay.
the insurance cost.
Okay.
They agree to that.
Sure.
It's part of it. It's like practicing being a homeowner.
Sure. Yep.
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 This will make the property cash flow better.
Of course.
Okay, so it's a better deal for the seller. And then again, it gets the tenant buyer ready. Okay, we're getting financially ready to buy this house, right? But that's a lease. And then separately, you have an option. The option to purchase absolutely 100% needs to be prepared by a lawyer,
Yep.
Okay.
and each party needs to have their own lawyer, independent legal advice. Otherwise, it can blow up.
Sure.
So those are things that didn't used to happen in the old
Yep.
days. You used to be
No,
able to write it
not
on a
at all.
napkin. You write it
Handshake
on
deals.
a napkin, and we're off to the races.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it is just, we have learned the hard way, the expensive way, that is really not a good idea.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So in this scenario, and I keep coming at it as the person selling the home, because I think there's a lot of listeners out there that might be trying to sell their home right now. Andre included, trying to sell some homes, where this could be an option for them. Now, one thing they might be thinking is like, but I need money to buy my next home. And I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm selling this house, I'm now taking a rent payment in. So yes, I'm going to have monthly cash flow coming in from the property in rent, over and above my sale price I've agreed to. Typically, there's a small down payment made, so there is a small chunk of money made right off the top. But what if I need to have more money than that to move on? And my thought process goes, well, you could open up a line of credit on your asset. You still own the asset of the house. You can take the money that you need to purchase or do whatever you're going to do, and the rent that's coming in is going to be paying that down for you. And that allows you to kind of am I thinking the right way there?
Well, I think that I think you're on the right track. Here's what can happen in a scenario like that. If somebody needs to move on and they need to buy another house, they may have challenges because they already own a house. But now it's rented and you have a lease to show the bank. So some lenders, particularly I'm hearing lately, Scotiabank is the best lender to go to if you are trying to buy another principal residence and you already have a rental property, because they will count your rental income favorably.
Yes.
But it all depends on somebody's credit and how credit worthy they are.
Right.
So I'd love to say they can just move on and it's easy peasy, but they really need to have a conversation with their mortgage broker to see if it's doable.
So if I was selling my home right now and I'm listening and I'm thinking, hey, I think a rent-to-own option might be something I'd be willing to do, the first step would be contact your mortgage broker and discuss what your next move is and how much money you need to do that. And if you turned that property into a rental, would you be able to still make that move happen?
Right. And another idea that I do know about, if you get, you can, in some situations, you can move into your principal residence and get the down payment from a family member, or usually a family member. In some cases, there are RSP programs where you can use your RSP as your down payment. But again, you need to talk to your mortgage broker about
absolutely.
what options are available to you, and everybody's as different as a fingerprint.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. You want to hear an example?
Sure.
We had this couple over in the West Side, and they bought their house cash, and they were like, "We're going to rent it out." And they got some professional renters in there.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so Andre knows what I'm talking about. These are people that move from house to house to house and squat and never pay rent.
They don't pay rent.
And
That's a thing?
Yeah.
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 These
Because
days
they rely on the basically the time gap it takes for them to actually be evicted forcefully, right, from the property after not paying rent. Like there's
I know
a year
BC
worth of
I know.
time that happens in that
it's
gap.
Yeah, BC is so favorable to tenants. So it's something that they just took the first phone call, just being naive.
Yeah.
Took the first phone call, terrible, wrecked their house. Then they wanted to sell the house, but they refused to work with a realtor. They're like, we're not paying a realtor, right? And we found them because they had a for sale by owner sign. And so they owned it free and clear. And we said, we'll take, we said, we'll take care of it for you. We'll give you your price. We gave them great cash flow, and we helped find a tenant buyer that moved into the house, and they ended up buying the house. So
Amazing.
it worked out really well for them. That ended up working out really well for them. They were able to move on because they already owned it free and clear. That means they had no mortgage on it.
So we've got to wrap it up. I'm sure we could talk for a whole nother hour about this. But if you're out there listening and you might want some other strategies to buying and selling houses, Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group. Do you have a website?
I do. It's OkanaganReig.com. That's for Okanagan Real Estate Investment Group.com.
So visit the website. They have monthly meetings and gatherings where people get together and talk about all these topics in depth. You've got people who've done them, people trying them, people who want to do them.
When's your next meeting?
Yeah.
We have an amazing guest. We have Jamila coming to talk about infill housing on March 13th.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
So you should totally come, Andre.
I will definitely come.
We would
I will
love to have
definitely
you
come.
there. We have a special community. I'm telling you, we got great people. I'm very proud of what we've created.
Well, I'm excited to come and chat on March 13th. You can go to the website and find out all the details. We have to wrap it up today. Thanks for the little plug at the end, Julie.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll chat to you soon.